So apparently, the overwhelmingly white countryside needs halal food. This is according to a report that has come out from the Centre for Hate Studies at University of Leicester. They've done a report, I presume funded by your taxes, on rural racism. The academics claim that ethnic minority communities face challenges in the countryside because rural England is overwhelmingly white, and this apparently makes people feel uncomfortable, and the psychological burden that comes with navigating predominantly white spaces, that causes discomfort to ethnic minorities trying to go for a walk in the countryside. The poor things. The report also raises concerns that traditional pub culture and other monocultural customs are exclusionary. I tell you, if the lefties manage to close down the pubs on the basis that it promotes racism, that's the end for me. I'm leaving this country. Hope you're enjoying this video so far. Most of you watching this, however, are not actually subscribed to this channel, so hit the subscribe button down below and the notification bell so that you can stay in the loop when we're posting new videos. And this did remind me, this story, before I ask your thoughts on it, Rafe, of a story that I remember we looked at on our Reason podcast last year, which was the National Trust, who are becoming more and more woke, partly because they have to in order to get funding. But they decided to introduce a new project where they would train up a load of walk leaders from global majority communities. It still baffles me that they're not happy with the term ethnic minorities and have had to change that to global majority communities. But there's this narrative that the countryside is full of white people simply because any person of colour that's ever come to the countryside to live there or go for a walk has kind of had two fingers put up to them and they've been treated poorly and in a racist manner. But isn't it all a bit bonkers, Rafe? Haven't they got, these lefty academics, haven't they just got it all wrong?
Yeah, I'm so sick and tired of these ridiculous loons that, who are desperately searching for evidence of racism under every nook and cranny. This report comes out from the University of Leicester, which is the University of Leicester Centre for Hate Studies. I mean, my God, the name alone tells you that this is going to be a hugely biased organisation. What's remarkable is that they've done no research on their own doorstep. Leicester is riven with hate between different ethnic minority communities. We had riots on the streets between anti-Hindu Muslim mobs and Hindus that they were attacking on the streets.
Wow.
We know from even the insidious Hope Not Hate organization, which we normally like to condemn, they came out with a report in 2020 showing that by a factor of 2 to 1, ethnic minorities believe that there is more tension between ethnic minority groups than between whites and non-whites. 40% say there's more tension between, say, blacks and Asians or Muslims and Hindus than there is between the white population and so forth. And yet, of course, why isn't the University of Leicester looking into any of that? Because there's a clear agenda here. And I think we need to call this out for what it is. English, Welsh, Scottish, and Northern Irish identities are intrinsically linked to the landscape. If you ask an Englishman to conjure up an image of England, his thoughts will immediately go to the idyllic English countryside, England's green and pleasant land, as we say. So the countryside epitomizes the nation and the soul of the nation in many senses. It's an emotional, spiritual connection. And so to denounce the countryside as racist is to deliberately attack, in my view, the notion of Englishness, the notion of Britishness and national identity. And this, it's the University of Leicester, it's the National Trust. All of these institutions have been captured, and they're trying to create a future where the British people no longer have any pride, any trust or belief in their culture or their heritage or their traditions. That's the goal. It's the demoralization of the British people through a war of attrition, which seeks to undermine that. And the race zealots who say that the countryside is racist or that British culture is racist, they don't care about ethnic minorities at all. Make no mistake about that. I remember Peter Hitchens saying when he was on the far left, they were in favor of open borders, not because they liked minorities, because they hated Britain. This is a visceral hatred of Britain and the West, and they seek to undermine it at every opportunity. And my gosh, imagine saying that people feel psychologically burdened by going into a majority white area. Look, why do
going
people
into a pub?
Why do people go to India? Imagine going to rural China. Say, "Oh, I've got a psychological burden here." We go to the countryside, to rural life, to see something completely different from the increasingly
Mm.
homogenous cities that exist around the world. It's really special. I mean, I'm just thinking of, to paraphrasing Basil Fawlty from Fawlty Towers, what do you expect to see in the English countryside other than a pub and white people? Are you looking for a African tribal dance, a Jamaican steel band? I mean, a Chinatown? It's absolutely ludicrous.
I mean, I think you're spot on when you say that the reason why this narrative is being pushed out by these researchers is not because they care about ethnic minorities, but because they hate this country. And I'd be interested to know how many people who are people of colour, who are part of ethnic minorities, were actually consulted, or if it was just a bunch of white British lefties deciding for another group how they feel. I mean, Rafe, do you genuinely believe that if, say, a black person goes for a walk in the countryside, that they would feel on edge and concerned that people are looking at them? That's one of the things that was spoken about here. People feel like they're being looked at funny, or if someone says, "Oh, you might need a raincoat," they're suggesting that people of colour don't know how to navigate the countryside, and it comes from racism. Do you genuinely believe that people of colour feel discomfort, to use their words, when they go visit the countryside?
No, well, some people probably do, because increasingly a number of people are looking for racism and
Mm.
microaggressions everywhere. But look, for heaven's sake, I know people and relations and others who arrived into Britain in the 1950s when it was 99% white. They didn't never spoke to me about being psychologically burdened by living in a country, and that was a time when you did have a great deal of xenophobia in the country. Britain.
Mm.
Let's just remind your viewers, the World Values Survey, which is the world's leading survey on racism, every year issues its report about racism around the world. Britain consistently ranks in the top three least racist nations, behind
Absolutely.
only Brazil and Sweden. So rather than constantly looking for division, trying to make up grievances around racism where they don't exist, why don't we celebrate how brilliant and welcoming Britain really is? And I've been to, me and my friends, we've been to the Middle East, been to Asia, been to Africa, and I can tell you, when you go to some of these places, because we looked exotic, and so we had people coming and standing next to us and having their pictures taken next to us as if we were the tourist attractions, walking through slums in India or Africa or wherever, even going to tourist sites. People end up taking our photograph. Now that would be interpreted as racism, wouldn't it, if it happened in this
Mm.
country? But this is just a global phenomenon. You see someone that doesn't look like they looks unusual, you're going to look and stare at them. But we've moved on from that in Britain, for heaven's sake. I mean,
Mm.
if you watched any BBC Midsummer Murders, or Father Brown Mysteries, you'd think every village was half black in the 1950s. I have to say, but everything is. The other thing to point out here is that, why do people assume that all cultures want to go to the countryside and take hikes and so forth? This is something we don't talk about enough. Different
Mm.
cultures have interests. So actually, you don't see a lot of ethnic communities going into the country and doing hikes. My father was born in Kenya in Africa, and he would go for picnics with his family, but you would never see Africans going for picnics in the and on the plains and so forth. Different cultures have different interests altogether.
Mm.
We know, of course, that if you go to the theatre, you're going to see London looking whiter than you've ever seen it looking. So there are different interests that people have, and we mustn't just assume. It's actually quite racist to assume that everyone
Mm.
wants to take part in European activities.
Exactly, and also the reason why few ethnic minorities live in the countryside is because it's pretty normal that if you move to a country as an immigrant, the first place you're going to go is to a city, because you hear that that's where there are jobs, that's where there's easy transport, and all the rest of it. So, anyway, brilliant as ever, Rafe. Thank you very much for joining us.